Okay, looks like we've got people trickling in. Welcome, everyone. We are going to give it a couple of seconds here. I saw a handful of guests that were in the waiting room, so we're just going to wait for people to slot in here. But this is our second and final info session for our Manufacturing Accelerator at Rev. Looking forward to giving you all some more details and information about the accelerator, how it works, what you should expect. So we're just going to give it probably another minute or so as we wait for people to trickle in here. And we'll get things pulled up and get ready to go. Right. Lindsay, can you give me a sanity check? We're looking at slides. You can hear me, you can see me. We are all good. Thank you. Um, all right. I see our numbers are still going up just a little bit here, so I'm going to give it another, maybe one more minute, and then we will get started. All right. As always with these info sessions, we're gonna run through these slides, and I do like to give everyone fair warning that I do my best to field questions that come up if they're relevant to a specific slide, but we will have plenty of time for questions at the end. So if you do have something that comes up that is like directly about one slide as we're looking at it, please feel free to drop a message in the Q&A in the chat. I will try to keep an eye on it. If there is something immediately relevant, Lindsay will keep an eye on it, but you can always drop those in, and if I don't answer them during the presentation, we'll get them at the end as we have time. So I think we are going to get started here. So welcome everyone. I know there's a couple of familiar folks in this room who have been through our previous accelerators, and this is our last and final hardware accelerator. This is our manufacturing accelerator. So looking forward to explaining a little bit about what that means, what you should expect if you're thinking about applying. So we're going to start off today talking a little bit about our team and our philosophy. So if you've worked with Rev before, this is going to be familiar to what you've heard. It is the same team and philosophy across all of our accelerators. We'll talk about the details of the program, what you should expect and how it works. And then we're going to wrap up with kind of the resources, what options you have for the program. We have two different models of how you might engage with the accelerator, and they're designed for two different types of startups. So we'll talk about what that looks like and what might be beneficial. And this tends to be where we get a lot of questions as well as to what that kind of operationally looks like. All right. So this is us, right? We're a team of hardware-friendly people here. So we have a mix of hardware engineers, Cornellians, in any way, shape, or form. We have a mix of students, grad students, faculty that are in our pool of folks, as well as alumni and otherwise. Have a number of experienced entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs in residence, as we call them, and technical mentors that help out kind of across the board. So our goal really is to support hardware startups and hardware founders from all angles to the best of our ability. And so that's a lot of what you can expect from us. We don't always have the exact person, but we like to say that we know a guy. So if we don't have the right person in-house, we try to find you the right connections to get things moving. We're going to start with some intros to our team specifically. So many of you have interacted with Ken. You've heard from Ken before. Ken is our business lead. He's the director and founding director of our hardware program. So he has all of the answers about things business and rev. He's an entrepreneur in residence. He does work and mentor with a number of our teams. He's an I-Core instructor. He teaches at the Johnson School. His software is his background, but as anyone knows, if you bring out a PCB, Ken will talk to you about PCB design for as long as you would like him to. So Ken is our business lead for the majority of these programs, but he runs basically all things Rev and is involved with a handful of other entrepreneurship programs. Right. And I'm Deanna. I'm our Associate Director of Hardware Programs. So I speak more specifically to hardware. And my background is engineering by default. So mechanical engineering, industrial design. I've worked in robotics. I've been now working with startups for the last 3 years at various stages of development. I enjoy the process kind of from start to finish and the strategy therein. So I am primarily mechanical, but I work a little bit on the electrical side and a lot on the scaling up. I'm the lead for our team here. We have a number of different students and variety of full-time engineers. We're going to hear from Lindsay in just a minute, but I'm the technical lead, so most things on the technical side go through me at some point. Lindsay?
Hi, I'm Lindsay. the product development engineer here at Rev for our hardware programs. I have a background in mechanical engineering, and I really enjoy all things product design, product development, prototyping. I like thinking about the end user and how product development relates to that. And yeah, I'm really excited to work with this new cohort.
Sydney.
Hi everyone. Yes, I'm Sydney Golding. I'll be the program coordinator for all of our hardware accelerators. I recently started. I'm also working with Rev, and I will be your point of contact for anything, questions, and information regarding application process, the program schedule, or resources, and setting up meetings. So you'll find that contact information down at the bottom. Thank you guys.
So Sydney is your go-to person if you are thinking about applying or you have questions about the application. Sydney is the go-to person. She's also the person that screens all the applications and funnels them over to us. So if you do end up in the manufacturing accelerator, you will know Sydney very well. Um, Jen runs our food and ag program, so we do specifically have an AgTech track, and Jen runs all of the food and ag things that go here. So if you were involved or heard about the Grow New York program that ran last week, that's all Jen. So if you are an ag tech entrepreneur, Jen is someone that you want to know, you want to be in contact with. She's been running our programs for the last few years now, and is probably the foremost leader in our space here, is great at connecting you to the right people, the right researchers, the right resources. So if you are an ag tech founder, Jen Smith will be a person you want to be in touch with. Okay. So our philosophy across all of our programs is the same: simultaneous development of the business model and technology. So you've got to make sure that you can build something for a person, that it's going to be viable, and it's going to be sellable. So that's across all of our programs what you should expect from us. You're always going to have business and tech in parallel in some way, shape, or form. We practice a lean startup methodology. We are always looking to involve the customer and really test and validate as you go forward. So very strategic, very systematic about how we progress you through the product development process. And as I mentioned earlier, a big part of what we do with our team is try and surround the entrepreneur with support. So if we don't have the answer, but you're looking for something, we hope to connect you with the right person if we are not the right person, and help get you where you need to go. Whether that's funding resources, whether that's tech resources, whether that's general legal advice. We have different lawyers that are in our ecosystem and so on. So we do our best to really give you all the resources that you would need to determine where you're at, where you're going. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the program. What does manufacturing mean? Is it the right thing for you? Does it make sense for where you are in the development process? So this is our standard funnel that you see over here on the right. I know there are a handful of folks that are in our manufacturing accelerator right now. What we consider manufacturing, and for the manufacturing program, is everything from design validation onward. So what does that mean? It means that you have at least a handful of your parts that are ready to move towards production quality. So that looks different for everyone. We have a number of products where your top volume is going to be 30 parts at a time. We're working with someone now that's in that bucket. That doesn't mean that you need to go into full production mode, because at 30 parts per order, you might be looking at low volume methods and you might be taking a different approach than some other startups. But what you want to think about when I say manufacturing is, what is your sustainable business model? If your goal is to sell 30, then I want you using the appropriate methods to make those 30. If your goal is to do kind of a turnkey one-off solution, something different for each customer, but it's a big buy, right? Then whatever is going to be economically viable for you, that's the method we want to pair with it. So it doesn't necessarily mean like you're producing tens of thousands of parts. It can mean you're making 30 parts, but that we've gone through that bill of materials. We've made sure that you're producing it in a way that's lean and functional for your business. So that can look different for everyone, and I'd just like to flag that early. So the goal is that you can reproduce and sustain the product that you are making. On the business side, it does line up, and I do like to flag that it means you usually have some funding because very rarely are you going to be entirely building this by hand in your shop. You at the very least need to hire people to help you build them by hand in your shop type of scenario. So there's usually funding involved in some way, shape, or form at this stage because you are looking to have a sustainable model. You need that income to be able to produce your product. Our goals for this program. So by the time you've reached the Manufacturing Accelerator, we're really focused on the left-hand side of the business model canvas. So we're talking about finalizing your key partners, outlining your costs and revenue, and figuring out those key activities. This all pulls into knowing that sustainable model. Again, that doesn't mean super high volumes, but it means you've got to know who you're working with, what your costs are, and whether or not you're making money as a business. Secondly, on the product side, we're focusing on scaling to launch. So whatever those processes are, whatever that product is, you should be selecting the manufacturers or the methods that work for you and finding either assemblers, whether that's in-house or outsourcing to help build the product. You are likely receiving your first production samples. So we want to get people to those first round orders. You have something that is a sellable product. You've got those first samples coming in. And that might be in the form of beta tests or initial sales. So if you have a pile of pre-sales right now and you need to fulfill those, this is a great time. If you're looking to launch a pre-sales campaign in the near future, this is a good time to think about the Manufacturing Accelerator, scaling to launch, getting product ready to go to customers. And that is directly tied to the last piece then is making sure that you have funding for those initial production costs, whatever that looks like. You might be launching pre-sales campaigns, you might have paid pilots, you might have either initial sales, letters of intent, or anything like that, but you've got a runway to get product out to customer. So some things to think about to know if this program is right for you. So you might be close to a design freeze. You have gone through, vetted your design, you've thought about how you're going to make it, you've thought about how you're going to be able to sustain the way that you're making it. You maybe have some low volume prototypes that are designed with manufacturing intent. So even if you're 3D printing them, you've thought about, well, at volume, whatever your volume is, you know how you're going to make it and you've designed it for the way that you want to make it. You have evidence of product market fit. That could be customer discovery, it could be paid or unpaid pilots, it could be through funding, but you have people saying, I want this, this is the right thing, I want to invest in this. You've got that evidence of product market fit, you've got that runway so that you are not just going to be building in your shop and amassing a lot of inventory. You have movement of product. And your funding strategy is in place where you have at least some funding available to support that. You shouldn't be coming into the manufacturing program saying, I don't know how I'm going to make this, I don't have any funding yet, or I don't know how I'm going to get funding. You should have some type of strategy that's going to support that. Things you probably do not have at this point. You should not that you should not, but usually you do not have revenue coming in. You are not necessarily selling product already. You probably don't have a manufactured product, possibly low volume production, but unlikely to be high volume production. And you also normally don't have a full team of engineers. I think we tend to forget that there's the cost of making your product and there's the cost of hiring the engineers to design your product. Those two things tend to go very hand in hand. And if you have a full team of engineers, you are in some ways very capital rich here. So typically we don't have people that have a full team of engineers. There are some holes, there's some lean strategy in how you're managing your team. Okay. The way the program is broken out is into tracks. Now, these are primarily for our reference to put you with the right people. It's the way that I like to think about it. If you are in a program track, it means that we try to put you with mentors that are in that space, or you work generally with a specific group of people in the cohort where we have you in the same breakout rooms and so on, where you can talk MedTech and you're all kind of in the same space or so on. So just going through this quickly, the ClimateTech track is anything that supports decarbonization of the economy. The AgTech track, like we already mentioned, we have a lot of ag resources here at Cornell and in the Finger Lakes area. So anything that is building and supporting the ag sector, of course, we have specific ties to things in the region. The MedTech track, therapeutic, diagnostic, generally anything that improves human health. We're actually a little bit broad in the way we interpret MedTech. Sleep tech is an upcoming thing. We put this into MedTech as well. And then our classic track is kind of a catch-all for what we'd say anything else. I hate saying that, but if you have a product that is hardware that has a physical component to it and doesn't fit in one of the three tracks above, that's the classic track. This isn't something you should think too much about when you're applying. Like I said, it doesn't really make a huge difference. It mostly helps us pair you up with the right people and keep you with the right people throughout the program. So just a little bit more detail again, kind of rehashing here. The ClimateTech track, we do pair you up with people that have specific industry experience in this sector. So we pair you up with a mentor that has experience here. You'll get some resources on carbon footprint calculation. We know coming into these discussions that you've got that in mind as you go forward. We'll help vet that out through the process, through report outs and any other check-ins that we might have. And connections to other climate founders. Like we said, we try to put you in breakout sessions in a group so that when one person is connected with a resource, you can possibly learn from that as well. Our AgTech track is a sponsored track, so it's from the U.S. Economic Development Administration's University Center program. This has been ongoing now. We've had the AgTech track for the last 3 or 4 years, I believe. It precedes the time that I joined Rev, so my answers here are not necessarily perfect, but looking for tech innovation in the food and agriculture sector. So there's a lot of ways you can do this, and there's a lot of crossover now we see between AgTech and ClimateTech. So we get a lot of people that are cross-listed there, and that's totally fine. But lots of different ways this can be implemented. If you are AgTech, you probably know that you have some connections to this industry, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But if you think you might be AgTech and you want to have a discussion, that's totally fine as well. Our MedTech track is also a funded track from the U.S. Economic Development Administration Build to Scale grant. It's a little bit of a mouthful. It is in partnership with Weill Cornell. And this is generally anything that you might think falls into the medical space. I do want to highlight that there are a number of medical devices that we've worked with, both currently and in previous cohorts, where the initial product is not to go through FDA approval, but it's to sell it as a consumer product and then to validate that clinical aspect later. There are a number of different products that have taken that route. It's not for everyone, but I do want to flag that you still count as a MedTech entrepreneur if that is a strategy that you're planning to pursue. And then our classic track, like I said, this is kind of the catch-all. So Ken likes to say software wrapped in plastic, but realistically, all you need to have is a physical component. It does not need to have electronics. We've had things across the board here, from femtech to wearables to nonprofits focusing on social good. Like, we've been all over the board here. So if you have a physical product, as long as it's not just software, you're eligible for the classic track, so you are eligible to apply. But if you are just a software platform that uses an off-the-shelf product, that's not going to be a fit for what we're doing. Okay. Long story short, you don't need to think too hard about the tracks. If you very clearly know you are a MedTech product, apply to MedTech. If you are not quite sure, you can apply to Classic, and we might say, hey, we actually think you'd benefit from being in the ClimateTech track, so we're going to just move you to that, and we're going to pair you with the right resources and other teams in that area. Does not at all change the way we view your application. We do have some numbers that we need to meet on the back end. That is not of concern to you when we first screen your application. So it's not something that you need to be tremendously concerned about. Okay. how does this program work? I'm going to take a breath here for a second because these are usually the details that we all need to know. So the program is it's a long accelerator. It's broken into two main parts. We have content on the front end and then mentorship that continues throughout the program. So it is a year-long commitment in theory. The first 5 months are where the bulk of the work is because that's when you have content sessions, where you have design reviews, and where we would have in-person visits. There is one in-person requirement for this program. The primary program is delivered virtually, so you do not need to be anywhere near Ithaca, New York, but we do have some time zone restrictions because our sessions are Monday afternoons. So generally, the sessions are going to run Mondays from mid-January through mid-May. You can see there are some exceptions there. Design reviews are going to be on the last Wednesday of every month. So you'll have a chance to give updates, get feedback on your design every month during the main chunk of the program. And then we do have in-person sessions in May, and that's primarily to go visit manufacturers. So there will be some content or debrief around that, but you're going to have an in-person commitment where you've got to be in Ithaca for a few days. We're going to take you out to manufacturers in the area. You can get a feel for manufacturing facilities, what you should know, what you should be asking about. But then that mentorship continues through the end of 2025. So if you join in January, we're going to have a lot of programming the first few months, and then you're going to have continued access to the resources at Rev, be that mentorship, business mentorship, technical mentorship, shop use. We'll talk about those resources as we get towards the end of the presentation here, but just note that primarily you're committing to the front end. The back end is all on your own time. You're scheduling those meetings, and it's all virtual. Okay. So the way the program is structured, so we have those virtual sessions Monday afternoons. You have cohort and mentor wide design reviews on the last Wednesdays of the month. And then you will have bi-weekly meetings with your mentors. So you will get assigned a mentor, someone that's in your sector if you applied to a specific track, or one of our entrepreneurs in residence, depending on where you are in development timeline. We pair people up pretty specifically. And you get to meet with them 30 minutes twice a month. So bi-weekly check-ins, just to help you field questions, make sure you're tracking progress. There are two options from there within the program. There's a development model and there's an advising model, and that depends on you as a startup and what you're looking for, what type of support you need. So the resources that you get vary depending on what model you're considering. So I'll start with the advising model here on the right. Basically what this means is that you are getting mentorship, you're getting resources available to check in, get feedback, but not the same support that you get in the development model where you work more closely with the engineering team here at Rev. So in the advising model, you get access to documentation and any assessments that we might have that we'll go through in the program. All the templates that my team makes, we share, and so on. You have those bi-weekly mentor meetings, and then you have bi-weekly or monthly technical meetings. These are not required, but they are available to you. Those are great for people that have maybe a younger engineering team that are looking for some support, feedback, solving a couple of nitpicky issues as you go. The development model, very similar. You get all of the same resources in the advising model, but you also have engineering team meetings. So you would meet with my team for 30 minutes on a weekly basis. You would get engineering support from my team. That is usually about 10 to 20 hours a week. It's a mix of student and professional support between myself, Lindsay, and our student team. You would have remote access to the Rev shop through that support. So if you say you need something 3D printed or we're working on something for you, we're going to use the shop that gives you free access to those facilities. If you are in Ithaca, you get full access to Rev. The expectations are very similar. The main thing that I point out here is that you should be in contact with us in any capacity, any of these models here. Maintain good contact with us, come to the sessions, make sure your videos are on. All of this is outlined in the participation agreement if you are admitted to the program, so we do outline what our expectations are, but generally be engaged, go to your meetings, check in with our teams, and use the resources that we have for you. I'm not going to crawl through this in too much detail. I think it's pretty straightforward. So what does this mean if you are applying to the advising model? Because I do think this is a really big distinction and it really depends on your team and what you're looking for. The things we're considering in your application: your product development. What is the status of your prototype and what's your expected time to market? You should be getting product to market sometime in the course of the 12-month program. What is your beachhead market? Do you know who that early customer is, who your first adopters are? Are they lined up for sales, or do you have the right value proposition in place for them? Coachability. Are you engaged with your customers? Are you going to be good at taking feedback and working with our team? Funding availability and timeline does play into this, again, tied to that prototype status. You want to make sure that you can get to market over the course of the program, at least in some capacity. And then does your team have good founder market fit? Are you the right person for your product? A strong example candidate for the advising model. So you have a larger team, maybe you've got 2 full-time people, 2 students. Those students are possibly helping out as a part-time capacity. They could be in a full-time capacity, but they're early graduates or recent grads. You've got an engineering prototype. You've gotten some feedback from customers. You've got an outlined PRD, your product requirements document. You've got a lot of different pieces moving. You're engaged with your customers. You have funding available, but you've got to figure out who to connect with. And you really need to get some guidance for those engineering students, or you're a first-time founder and you really need that mentorship. This would be a great candidate for the advising model. If you've got all of these pieces moving, you've got all these things in place, you're very likely to get into the program. The development model looks similar in what we are looking for in criteria, and you'll see the example candidate over here on the right. One of the big things that's a little bit different about the development model is we're looking more specifically at your engineering team. We don't want to have 4 different mechanical engineers trying to work remotely back and forth, dividing up the work. We don't want to have those types of issues. So if you are a solo founder, and you maybe only have like 1 software person, or you only have 1 mechanical engineer, and there's a clear gap in the skill set that you have, that's a really good opportunity for us to talk about a project that we could take on and so on. Your launch timeline should be very likely to launch in the next 12 months. If you are expecting that your runway is beyond 12 months, it is not a deal breaker, but it's something that gets weighted into the strength of your application for a development model. And product shop fit. So my team has specific expertise. If it is something well outside our expertise, we don't want to waste your time. We want you to get to market quickly. And so it could also be that it's not the right skill set for our team. Our example candidate here on the right, so 2-person team, full-time people, you've got software and business backgrounds. Perfect. My team is primarily mechanical and electrical, so this gives us a clear opportunity to work together and fill in some holes. You've got a small plastic enclosure for your product, maybe some metal mechanisms, all smaller stuff, easy for us to prototype, build, test, validate here. Maybe your product has been pilot tested with customers, so you're pretty confident in the design, ready to move forward, and you have funding available for tooling in the next 4 months. So kind of a wrap-up slide here. You've got those 2 different options, the development model and the advising model. If you're in the advising model, you can work very closely with us on technical development. I think this is something that I don't want to leave out. I want you to understand that there is still technical support in the advising model. We're happy to do design reviews. We're happy to give notes, feedback, questions that we might have, troubleshooting any issues or root cause analysis. There's different things that we can do in the time available, but I have yet to field a request where I say, actually, that doesn't make sense. I think there's lots that we can do in that time, and it can be a 30-minute review with a little bit of prep in advance. With the development model, you're getting more structured support. So you have that weekly meeting time. We set goals on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. We're going to ship prototypes or parts back and forth as needed. And we'll do a variety of things from CAD modeling to prototyping to schematics and layouts, electrical, mechanical testing, and so on. So if you are looking to apply, how does this work? Basically, if you apply, you are applying to both the advising model and the development model. You can leave notes if you have strong feelings, but we are going to be assuming that you've applied to both. I have very rarely seen someone that says we actually don't want any additional support, so we consider applications for both. And then depending on what seems like a good fit, we will make offers accordingly. Interviews are set up within 2 weeks of your initial application. So that application comes in, we vet it, and then we move you to an interview if everything looks good. We will make admission decisions first on the advising model. So you are not going to hear about the development model until we've caught all the applications and figured out who's the best fit, who needs us where. So don't be surprised if you get admitted to the advising model and you say, okay, but you really are pushing for the development model. Those decisions are made last. If you are new to the Rev programs, if you're new to our ecosystem, you've never worked with anyone before, you are probably going to get vetted for multiple interviews if you are looking to join the development model. So if you do get multiple interviews with a variety of people on our team, you should take that as a good sign. We're trying to pass you around and make sure that this is going to be a good fit for us. Some things that you should know about us and our facility. So we've got a variety of different tools and odds and ends floating around the shop here. Everything from laser cutters to CNCs, an abundance of 3D printers. We have a water jet, and some different electronics equipment from a PCB printer to a pick and place and more. So this is our shop. If you are in Ithaca, you would have access to this shop in some capacity potentially, and we'll discuss that if and when we get there. But we do a lot of small scale prototyping. We can do a lot of small scale testing prior to full scale testing and full production runs. Okay, so the deadline to apply to the program is November 22nd. If you are thinking about it, I would encourage you to apply. It's a very short application. It takes all of 15 minutes, most likely. We finalized those selections for the cohort mid-December, so you would be moving through interviews pretty quickly if you apply on the very last day that the application is open. But encourage you to apply if you're thinking about it. And if we don't think it's right for you and we think there's a different program that's a better fit or you're not quite at the right stage, we'll talk about what would make sense. All right. So I'm going to stop here. It looks like there are a few questions in the chat. Yep. So question about the timeline to market. So this is our third accelerator. So our accelerators are laid out over a 18-month development timeline, which varies, depends on the product. Simpler products can be less than that. More involved product can be substantially more than that. Our expectation is that in the 12 months of the program, you are at least moving some parts to production. Maybe it's a pilot run, so you need to get even just boards designed, but you should be moving towards a production quality product. It doesn't necessarily need to be production methods, but I like to say it should be moving towards production quality or something that you could sustain. So that's not a hard 12-month requirement, but if you are looking for the development model, we don't want to be prototyping for 12 months if you're looking for my team to work more specifically with you. So hopefully that answers the question, but you shouldn't think of that as a deal breaker if you're not there yet. That's totally understandable. Some products take longer than 12 months. MedTech tracks affiliation with Weill Cornell. So we're partnered with Weill Cornell. Weill Cornell is downstate, so it would be more about connecting you with some of the folks in our ecosystem and using the accelerator as a way to help get a foot in the door. It's not quite a cold email, it's a warm email if we can connect you with the right person, but it is downstate, so it is a little bit more remote from our direct operations here. But we do have a number of connections in the space, a number of connections with leaders in the field that we would pair you up with potentially, or try to help make connections where we can. So that's kind of a soft answer for what it looks like. I am unfortunately not the owner of those relationships, so I can't give you more details from that, but hopefully that's helpful. Any any other questions? Is the application process similar to the proto-factoring cohort? It is almost identical. Yes. There's a few differences, mainly, well, if you're asking about the proto-factoring cohort application, you may already be in the proto-factoring cohort. So you wouldn't have multiple interviews if you are looking for the development model, but that's the main difference is that if you want to be in the development model, you would be interviewing, you'd possibly have up to 3 interviews with our team to make sure that you're a good fit for that portion of the program, if that's something you're considering. But if you're asking about proto-factoring, you are probably already involved with some of us here at Rev, and you might not have that many interviews. So that would be the only difference. If there aren't any other questions, you are free to go. We will stay on this call for just a few more minutes in case something comes in, but actually this is a great question that has just come up, so I will say I'll field this last one, but then that's the end of the content I have, so if anyone does want to bounce off, I have nothing new to say other than questions that come in. So the question that we have here is about IP owned by other parties, for example, Cornell. So that's kind of an ironic one because Rev, all of the people that work at Rev are Cornell. So I don't really care where your IP comes from is my short answer. I cannot have my hands on IP in any way, shape, or form. I'm never going to ask you to present on something that you are developing as IP if you are not looking to share that with the cohort. Like I don't expect people to share things that are in development in the level of detail where it's a threat to your IP. I don't engage with IP other than helping with development. I am not written in on anything. I cannot be written in on anything. There's no equity. There's no IP ownership for anything we develop here if you're in the development tier. The only thing to note is that since we are Cornell employees, we cannot sign NDAs. And so if you are in the development model, I talk to all of the entrepreneurs on our first meeting and say, is there anything that you particularly don't want to put us on? Because I understand I can't sign an NDA. I understand that some entrepreneurs are very uncomfortable with that. That's just not anything that I can work around as a Cornell employee. So hopefully that answers the question, but we take no ownership of IP. We are not written in on anything. Even if we develop it here, it is all yours. And it's yours to handle whose IP it is if you're licensing or anywhere from there. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to field that offline, but hopefully that answers. Looking to get involved as a mentor or advisor. Yeah, so if you're 2 questions on mentor and advisor matching process. Okay, so if you are interested in being a mentor or advisor, you can email the Rev email, which will get funneled to Sydney, and Sydney will say, great, let's chat and see if this is a good fit. Might not be a chat with Sydney, it might be a chat with me or Ken or otherwise, but it would go to that Rev email. And Sydney, if you were able to drop it in that answer, that would be awesome. I think it's just like Rev at Rev Ithaca, but you would just reach out and say, I'm interested in being involved, and we'll see what we could do if something makes sense. It does look a little bit different for everyone. And then another question on the mentor advisor matching process work. Okay, so we have a pretty straightforward pipeline for how we do this. So if you get admitted to the program, then we have a kickoff session. It's that January 13th date. All of our mentors join that call. You give a quick pitch about the program, not about the program, sorry. You give a quick pitch of your company and your product, and the mentors on the call all like ping us after hours and say, oh, I was really interested in this, or I was really interested in that. And we do our best to match up there. All of our mentors, we have kind of classified already into what their expertise is. So we have MedTech mentors, we have AgTech mentors, we have ClimateTech mentors. And we make sure to match up. If you are in a specific track, we match you with one of those mentors. Usually one of those mentors is flagged, oh, I really liked so-and-so's product, I'd really like to work on it. And we say, great, that just matches up directly. So that's how that generally works. If you are coming from one of our existing programs, then you have the option to say, I would like to work with a new mentor, or I'd like to continue with the mentor I have. As long as that mentor is still available, we do try to maintain that continuity if possible. But that's how the process works. If there is someone specifically that you see on our website that you're interested in working with, happy to chat about that as well. Okay. Could you go over the duration of the development cohort support over the year-long program? I'm not entirely sure I'm following this question if this is intended to mean how the development model supports over the program. If you're in the development model, you get 12 months of support at what was outlined. So it's a 30-minute meeting once a week. That changes a little bit over the summer because we do run a prototyping accelerator at the same time. But you would have 10 hours a week of support, generally speaking, for the course of those 12 months. What tends to happen is that people make progress, they are running pilots, and then that support kind of wanes because you're testing product. You don't need us working on the CAD or working on the schematics until you come back with a bunch of feedback. So there is a little bit of like ebb and flow with development, but over the course of the 12 months, you get to work with us directly. As we see fit. And there's some different things that are written into how that works and what we work on. But yeah, you would have support over the course of the year if that's the intent of this question. Yes, incorporation is required. If you are looking to the manufacturing accelerator, you should have some form of a legal entity in place because that is a necessity of moving forward as a company to getting product out. But if you are not incorporated right today when you apply, that could be okay as long as you have plans to be incorporated by the beginning of the program. Can we request multiple mentors? This is an interesting question. I've never had someone ask this before. What I would say here is that if there are multiple mentors that you're interested in working with, you would still need to have one main mentor for consistency, and so that you have cohesion of who you're working with. But we've had a handful of people do check-ins, or occasionally they want follow-ups or feedback with someone else that's in our pool of mentors. So I don't think doing, two different mentors for your biweekly and like alternating would make sense because you want that consistency. But if you were like, oh, I really want to get feedback from so and so, many of our mentors are happy to, jump on a call as they have time and capacity. So that's something that we would discuss if you were admitted to the program, but you should assume you'd have one main mentor and you'd have potentially access to some of the other mentors that we work with. Okay. I'm going to give it 3 or 4 more minutes. If nothing else comes in, we're going to close it down. Hoping to see all of your applications coming in. We have a great time going through them and interviewing folks. So looking forward to seeing applications.
If no more questions come in and if questions arise while you're in the application process, you have that email. Feel free to send any questions there and we'll get you answered.
Yep. All right. I'm not seeing anything else trickling in, so I think that's a wrap. If there's any other questions, feel free to ping them over to that email, rev@revithaca. I'd like to wrap up by saying there's always a person at the other end of your application. This is basically our entire team. So don't feel like you're going to a bot. You're going directly to humans who are going to read it. If we have questions, we'll follow up with you. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Hope to talk to you soon. Bye.